Startups, the universal management system way. A startup begins with an idea inside someone's head. There is a business environment out there where something new is waiting to happen. A vision starts taking shape. You see a world that needs what you're providing, a better solution or product, a new service or software or technology, a better way of doing something. A formal identity is born when two or more persons agree to create a corporation and sign the required legal contracts. Protecting the project requires some sort of security measures. Patents and trademarks are one kind. Confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements are another. The use of name tags to enter a facility is also a security feature. The new project and future company can now place itself inside the relevant environment from which the new company will emerge. At this point, the identity is likely to imply the adoption of certain values, which will become part of the identity. Some versions of the VSM call this function policy instead of identity. Both are equally acceptable. In larger corporations, this function is carried out by the stockholders. A broader understanding of the identity will later include a mix of the whole viable system, including other stakeholders such as workers, clients, and suppliers. The identity gives birth to a planning function, whose job is not to create plans, but to do things that allow the nascent entity to transform inputs into a new corporation. Planning has its hands full. At this point, it will take the DNA from the identity's mandate and turn it into a full-fledged company. Once the corporation is established and working, planning will take another vital role. It will become the home of all sorts of exploration activities, learning about the outside world and adapting the corporation. Looking at the planning function in isolation, at this point in time, its job is to produce the company, build the whole thing. To do so, much more exploration of the relevant environment is needed. According to MIT's Professor FADY Saad, there are four main areas of concern that must be kept in mind as the startup corporation is emerging from the original idea to create certain type of businesses. The four areas of concern are inextricably linked. Product development requires money and knowing the future market. Also, an idea of the size of the staff needed to build a prototype, for instance. We are in a circular thinking mode and problem-solving process. Everything influences everything else simultaneously. Like so many things in the universe, this is a creative outward spiral taking form from the original idea. The company starts to take shape. If the UMS model is adopted as a template for creating a solid structure, then you can be sure that everything is being put in its proper place from the very beginning. The UMS model is exhaustive in the sense that it leaves nothing to chance. Product development is the work for engineering and is kept inside planning. Sales and marketing begin connecting to the outside relevant environment. Financials are certainly a big issue from the start. They require competent, knowledgeable people in this area. The future executive could become involved at this point to provide some answers. Human resources are being considered also. Many questions need to be answered. The future operation starts to take shape in broad strokes. As you can see, specialized knowledge goes into the planning spiral. The main difference between planning and the executive function is that planning is always in an exploration mode. On the other hand, the future executive collaborates with the planning mode but will work in an exploitation mode. That is, the company will produce something concrete using technology and/or machines in ways which are well known and tested. Nobody, however, keeps working in exploitation mode forever because of the need to learn and adapt. Here is a checklist for sales and marketing as part of the planning effort. Here is a checklist for the product development effort as part of the planning function at the startup phase. Key engineering or marketing experts might have to be invited to become a part of the corporation. Here is a checklist for financials as part of the planning function at the startup phase. All financial projections are highly interdependent from one another. A linear approach to problem solving is not very feasible. Here is a checklist for the team recruitment effort as part of the planning function at the startup phase. Here is a checklist for the entrepreneurship general environment, which envelops the relevant environment, which in turn envelops the operation and the management. All these variables have been modeled using the systems dynamics model from J. Forrester. Different countries provide different quality environments which can prove decisive to the success of the future corporation. At this juncture, with many teams of experts perhaps joining in the planning effort or answering vital questions, the owners or original partners may wish to consider if they want to invite new investors or share some stock options with the experts, whether the financial or some other type. The future company is still in its infancy. There are no sales yet and no external income source. This period has been characterized by Chuck Addisis, the famous author, as very chaotic. This validates the use of the spiral metaphor. What is actually going on from a cybernetic management perspective is that information has to be processed at lightning speed with maximum efficiency in order to break the natural entropic tendency towards total chaos. No room for bureaucracy. There are many collective intelligence methods that prove to be useful at this stage of planning and organizing the company and its future operation. A key distinguishing feature of the UMS VSM model of cybernetic management is that in the future, all connections between the vital functions of the company will be of a circular nature. Conversations and quick, effective negotiations are key to adaptation in a chaotic business world. I call my method aggregate mind protocol. It is very simple and consumes very little time. It gets the information out and agreements in. Once the main planning efforts have produced their expected outcome, comes the organizing phase. The focus is now on the operation. The operation function, shown here in red, comprises the activities which give the business corporation its reason for existence. The operation is what the company is all about, producing the goods or services or software that the company is working on to do business. This next graph shows the secret to the magic nature of viable systems, a recursive structure. As is fairly obvious, the operation shown here houses other UMS units. This trick works because the UMS VSM model has a fractal nature as described by Patrick Hoverstadt in the book The Fractal Organization. Once you understand the structure of the parent, then the structure of the child company becomes transparent too. We shall continue building until our model is complete. There are three main types of operation schemes depending on the contents of the operation. The operation can include other companies owned by a parent company, as happens in a holding company. The operation can also comprise different universal management units, each potentially viable, which are combined into a linear process, such as production, sales, delivery, etc. And thirdly, the operation houses one or more production processes regardless of their complexity. The UMS fits them all. Regardless of whether we are managing a group of companies or a set of operations, all can be treated as a viable entity or as a process. The graphic model shown up until now, however, is not yet complete. Two systems are still missing. The first is the coordination system, shown here as a square at 45 degrees. It links all the operations and provides a channel for reaching agreements or programming joint activities. Notice that the smaller subunits also show their coordination system in place. The lines connecting the coordination system are not shown for now. The other UMS component needed to create a viable business unit is the anomaly detection system, shown here on the left side of the graph as a pentagon pointing downwards. The anomaly detection system in the universal management system, it makes it a more general and effective concept than an aleatory audit system. So, the 7 systems that appear repeatedly as recursive structural support of a viable business are the following: security, identity, planning, executive, operation, coordination, and anomaly detection. The UMS model has an input and an output icon. The reason for showing both input and output is to emphasize that companies are not a thing but a process. A company is structurally identical to any living being, exchanging information, materials, and energy with its environment. The VSM focuses on the information processing constraints. The UMS adds the material aspects in a very deliberate way. The graphic model has a place for suppliers and supplies in the input, and products and customers in the output. The UMS model shown here is meant to make a clear distinction between the management and the productive process inside the yellow dotted oval. One of the most crucial differences with traditional management is that the UMS admits the use of two different logics. Management uses intensive circular causality, and the production process mostly cause-effect predictable logic. As soon as the company starts to operate, the planning function becomes the learning, teaching, and adaptation function. This is tremendously important because we live in the age of information, and knowledge becomes just as fundamental for individuals as it is for successful corporations. Shown here is a new addition to the relevant environment in its control and communications loop. It is the future environment that planning has to monitor from now on and learn from to be able to offset strategic risk. Getting a grasp of the startup model requires some final explanations. Every time we show this It means a circular feedback loop with amplifiers and filters. The circular feedback between two functions is a must for a cybernetic model which recognizes the importance of complex conversations going on between the persons involved in different functions. The logic is circular causality, meaning negotiation and consensus creation, or the arrival of a deep conviction. The Universal Manager adopts the flowchart scheme and basically the same triple index system from the VSM. The three layers of performance for every process are expressed as a value between 0 and 1. Other evaluations are graded from 0 to 100. In addition, the UMS projects percentages about the way each function is fulfilled in the eyes of the managers themselves. Doing this at different recursion levels creates a UMS scan, or immediate diagnosis of the viability of the organization. Different colors help get an instant perception of the current situation at any one recursion level. This final graph shows a list of all the circular control loops involved in creating and maintaining a viable organization. 18 control loops for each viable unit being mapped. Some loops are more important than others, but the list is a UMS innovation. Authority-based empires will inevitably become extinct in the near future.